A geologist named Vadim Kolpakov was exploring the deep woods of Siberia when he stumbled onto a massive stone cone that shouldn't exist.
The crater is the nest of a giant fire eagle. Some believe it's cursed and that those who go there will die.
This giant mound of limestone weighs over 1 million tons and sits in a place with no volcanoes for hundreds of miles. Early explorers thought it was a meteorite strike.
It sort of looks like a crater, but there's this bolus-looking thing in the middle. It's unclear how it formed or what exactly it is, and because it's in a remote location in Siberia, it's incredibly hard to study.
But the evidence points to something much weirder happening underground. Nobody expected this to happen, but every test since then has only made the mystery deeper. The crazy part is that the trees around this site show signs of radiation that science can't explain. Eagle nest mystery in Siberia. For a long time, the leading theory was that a piece of the famous Tunguska meteorite from 1908 landed here. Everyone expected to find space dust or bits of iron in the soil. But as the first team started digging, they realized it was not that simple. The rocks were not from space at all. They were local limestone rocks that had been broken into tiny pieces. There are still many rumors in the air, but what many can confirm is that the structure is much younger than the mountains around it. Looking at the trees, scientists think the mound was formed only about 250 or 300 years ago. This means it appeared while people were already living in Russia. But there are no records of a giant explosion or a mountain growing in the woods. One of the most overlooked aspects of the site is how quiet it is. Animals do not like to walk on the slopes, and birds do not build nests in the limestone. It sits there like a silent gray giant in a sea of green. Nobody saw this coming, but the shape of the mound is almost perfectly round. It is so perfect that some people thought it was built by hand. But building something this big in the middle of nowhere would be impossible for any group of people back then. The forest floor around the mound is covered in larch and pine trees that have stood there for centuries. When you compare the height of the trees to the height of the cone, you realize how huge this anomaly really is. Some of the blocks of limestone are the size of cars. Imagine the kind of power it takes to lift 1 million tons of rock and toss it into a neat pile. Scientists spent decades trying to map out every inch of the surface. They found that the rocks on the bottom are older than the rocks on the top. This means the mound grew from the inside out. It was not a single blast that created it. It was a process that took time. But here's the catch. There is no source of heat under the ground that could have pushed this rock up. There are no tectonic plates rubbing together here. It is a stable part of the Earth where nothing big should happen. And yet, this giant nest exists. The more scientists looked at the rocks, the more they realized they were looking at a puzzle that didn't have all its pieces. Every time they tried to explain the size, they ran into a wall. If it was a volcano, where was the lava? If it was a meteorite, where was the metal? The questions started to pile up faster than the rocks themselves. Researchers had to bring in more gear to look deeper into the Earth. They wanted to know if there was something buried under the center mound that was causing the strange shape. They used gravity sensors to see if the ground was heavier in certain spots. The results showed that there is something very dense and very large, about 500 feet under the surface. This object or pocket of material is what created the pressure to lift the limestone. But knowing it is there doesn't tell us what it is. It could be a pocket of gas or a massive chunk of iron. The mystery was no longer about what was on the surface. It was about what was hiding in the dark under the forest floor. The deeper the scientists looked into the ground, the more they realized the Earth was hiding a secret. Deadly radiation clues in wood. Scientists returned to the site with better tools to find out what was really going on under the rocks. They brought gear to measure magnetic fields and ground-penetrating radar to see through the limestone. What most people don't realize is that the mound is not just a pile of dirt. It is a complex system of layers that seems to have been pushed up in stages. The radar showed that there are giant empty spaces or voids deep under the center of the crater. These voids are shaped like long tubes that go way down into the crust. This is where the story takes a hard left. Some of the equipment started acting very strange as they got closer to the center mound. The magnetic readings were jumping all over the place, which usually happens when there is a lot of iron or something electrical nearby. But there is no iron in limestone. So, here's the deal. The researchers started taking samples of the wood from the trees growing right on the edge of the crater. They found that the trees started growing at a crazy fast speed about 200 years ago. It was like they had been given a giant dose of fertilizer, but there was no extra food in the dirt. Instead, they found traces of strontium and uranium in the wood. This is the kind of stuff you find after a nuclear reaction. However, the background radiation at the site today is totally normal. It is as if something radioactive was there for a short time and then just vanished. Basically, the trees recorded a mystery that the dirt forgot to keep. The crazy part is that the growth patterns look exactly like the trees near the Chernobyl site, but this happened long before humans knew how to split an atom. A lot of people are confused about why the trees would react this way if nothing hit the ground. Some experts think that pressurized gas was involved. They believe that deep under the earth, a giant bubble of methane or hydrogen got trapped. Eventually, the pressure became so high that it burst through the rock like a giant pop bottle. This would explain why the limestone is all shattered. But it doesn't explain the radiation or the strange growth of the trees. Hands down, the most confusing part is the inner mound. It looks like a plug that was pushed up after the main hole was made. To everyone's surprise, the rocks in the center are different from the rocks on the outside rim. They have been heated up to very high temperatures, almost like they were in a furnace. But limestone doesn't melt like lava. It usually just turns into powder when it gets too hot. This suggests that whatever happened was fast and carried a lot of energy. One of the most recent expeditions used seismic sensors to listen to the ground. They found that the earth under the crater is still shifting slightly. It is not a dead site. It is still moving and changing in ways that we can't fully map out yet. The tree rings are the most honest record we have. They show that in the year 1842, the trees suddenly doubled their growth rate. This lasted for about 40 years before going back to normal. During those 40 years, the trees absorbed the strontium from the soil. Where did that strontium come from? It is not a natural part of the Siberian forest floor. Some scientists think it was carried up from the deep mantle of the Earth by a massive gas explosion, but strontium-90 is usually a byproduct of a nuclear event. This has led to some very wild theories about what might be buried under the Patomskiy Crater. If it wasn't a natural event, then what could it be? The idea of an underground nuclear reaction sounds like science fiction, but the wood samples don't lie. They tell a story of a massive energy release that changed the local environment for decades. The animals in the area seem to know something is wrong too. Hunters say that deer and elk will walk around the crater, but never cross over the rim. They avoid the gray rocks as if they can still sense the danger from 200 years ago. Even the insects are rare on the mound itself. It is a dead zone in the middle of a living forest. When you look at the isotope levels in the soil, you see a pattern that matches the tree rings. The deeper you dig, the more concentrated the chemicals become. This means the source of the radiation is coming from directly underneath the center of the mound. It is not something that fell from the sky and scattered. It is something that was pushed up and then stayed there. The mystery of the radioactive wood has become the center of the whole investigation. If we can find out how the strontium got there, we can solve the riddle of how the crater was born. But for now, the data only makes the scientists more worried. They are dealing with a type of geology that doesn't follow any known rules. The data from the trees and the ground sensors started to point toward a very scary conclusion: cosmic impact theory falling apart. For a long time, everyone was obsessed with the idea that a meteorite caused the hole. It made sense because the Tunguska event happened in the same general part of the world. Everyone thought a heavy chunk of metal fell from the sky and buried itself deep in the dirt. But then, everything changed when they actually looked at the physics of the site. If a giant rock hits the Earth from space, it creates a lot of heat and pressure. It usually leaves behind shocked quartz, which is a type of crystal that only forms during a massive impact. Scientists searched every inch of the Patomskiy Crater and found 0 shocked quartz. They also didn't find any nickel or iridium, which are common in space rocks. The real kicker is the way the limestone is stacked. In a normal impact crater, the dirt is thrown out and lands in a messy pile. Here, the rock looks like it was pushed up from below in a very neat way. It is not a hole in the ground as much as it is a hill with a hole on top. This is a massive caveat for the space rock theory. Another idea was that it might be a volcano. But there is no lava, there is no ash, there is no volcanic glass. The nearest volcano is hundreds of miles away and has been dead for millions of years. This limestone is sedimentary rock, which forms at the bottom of ancient oceans. Volcanoes don't usually spit out limestone. So, the volcanic theory was tossed out too. Then things really started to spiral as people looked for other answers. Some suggested it was a man-made mine, but there is no way to move 1 million tons of rock in secret. Plus, there is nothing valuable in the limestone to mine for. Against all logic, the structure remains unique. There is nothing else like it on the entire planet. That was the moment everything shifted for the research teams. They realized they weren't looking at a normal geological event. They were looking at an anomaly that broke all the rules of how we think the Earth works. Some scientists started looking at the idea of a natural nuclear reactor. This is a rare thing that can happen when a lot of uranium gets bunched up in one spot with some water. It can start a slow burn that creates a lot of heat and gas. This would explain the radiation in the trees and the heat that shattered the rock. But the amount of uranium needed to do this is huge, and they haven't found a big deposit of it yet. It turns out that every time they solve one small part of the puzzle, 3 more questions pop up. The mystery wasn't getting solved. It was getting much worse. The shape of the crater is very strange because it has that inner mound. In space impacts, you only see that in very large craters, much bigger than this one. For a small crater to have a central peak, the ground has to be very soft or behave like a liquid. But this is solid limestone. To make limestone act like a liquid, you need more pressure than a small meteorite can provide. The math just doesn't add up for a cosmic hit. People also looked at the possibility of a piece of antimatter or a tiny black hole. These are fun to talk about, but there is no evidence for them either. If a black hole hit the ground, it would have gone all the way through the Earth and come out on the other side. No one reported a giant explosion in the middle of the ocean at the same time. We are left with a pile of rocks that tells us what it isn't, but won't tell us what it is. The lack of cosmic dust is the final nail in the coffin for the space theory. When you look at the dirt around the mound, it is exactly the same as the dirt 5 miles away. There is no extra iron, no shiny glass beads, and no weird minerals from another galaxy. It is just broken bits of the same rock you can find in the nearby riverbeds. This means the force that created the Patomskiy Crater came from inside our own planet. Something under the forest floor decided to wake up and push 1 million tons of rock into the sky, and it did it in a way that left behind chemicals that shouldn't be there. The more we look at the physics of the mound, the more it looks like an explosion that was contained. It didn't blow everything away. It just pushed it up. This takes a very specific amount of energy and a very specific type of pressure. It is like the Earth had a giant blister that finally popped, but the skin was made of solid rock. If the Earth didn't do this and space didn't do this, the only options left were truly wild. Shifting Earth under the cone. Just when you thought it was over, some researchers decided to look into much stranger ideas. Since the normal science wasn't working, they started thinking about exotic matter. One theory suggests that a tiny piece of a neutron star or a small black hole might have hit the Earth. Because these things are so heavy, they would fly right through the crust like a bullet through paper. As it passed through, it would create a massive shockwave and a lot of heat. This could explain the cylindrical hole and the way the rock was pushed up. But there is no evidence of a hole on the other side of the planet where it would have come out. And that was just the beginning of the weird ideas. Others think it could be a hidden base or an underground structure that collapsed. There are stories from the 1930s about strange lights seen in the sky near the crater. Some people think the limestone mound is just the roof of something much bigger buried underneath. This is where the story takes a hard left into the unknown. See, the shape of the mound is so symmetrical that it looks engineered. The inner mound sits exactly in the center, like a piece of a machine. But there are no signs of metal or technology in the samples. It is all just rock. Wait, it gets better. Some geologists think the mound might be a cryovolcano. That is a volcano that spits out ice and gas instead of fire. This happens on moons in outer space, but it is very rare on Earth. If a giant pocket of frozen gas under the ground warmed up, it could have pushed the limestone up as it expanded. But the temperatures in Siberia are very cold, and the gas would have had to come from very deep down. Many are not seeing the truth here because they want a simple answer. The truth is that the Patomskiy Crater might be a combination of things we don't fully understand yet. The real shocker was when a team found that the magnetic anomaly isn't just one spot. It moves. It changes over time as if something is moving around deep under the rocks. This is not how normal magnetic rocks work. Looking back, that was the red flag that told everyone they were dealing with something active. It is as if the mound is breathing or venting something that we can't see with our eyes. Scientists have used microphones to listen to the ground, and they heard strange low-frequency hums. These sounds are too steady to be an earthquake. They sound more like gas moving through a pipe or a machine working far underground. Some think it is just the sound of water moving through underground caves. But the Irkutsk region is not known for giant cave systems in this type of rock. The more we listen, the more it seems like there is a process happening right now that we can't explain. In 2013, a team tried to drill into the center of the mound. They only got about 100 feet down before their equipment broke. The rock was much harder than normal limestone. It was like it had been compressed by a massive weight. They found that the deeper they went, the hotter the rock became. This is normal for the Earth, but the heat was rising much faster than it should. It was like they were getting close to a heater. But there are no magma chambers nearby. If there is no lava, what is making the rock so hot? The mystery of the moving magnetic field and the underground heat has led to a lot of debates. Some researchers think there is a pocket of methane ice called a hydrate deep below. When these hydrates melt, they turn into a huge volume of gas very quickly. This gas could have pushed the rock up and created the crater. But this doesn't explain the radiation or the strange sounds. Every time we find a clue that points to one answer, another clue points the opposite way. It is a tug of war between different parts of science. One of the most interesting parts of the newest data is that the mound is actually shrinking by a few inches every year. The Earth is slowly trying to pull the limestone back down. This tells us that the pressure that pushed it up is starting to fade away. We might be watching the very end of a geological event that started 300 years ago. If we don't solve it soon, the evidence might sink back into the Earth and be lost forever. The more we learn about the site, the more it feels like we are missing the biggest part of the story. Eternal riddle in cold woods. So, here's the deal. After years of testing and many expeditions, we still don't have a final answer that everyone agrees on. The Patomskiy Crater is still there, sitting in the cold woods, keeping its secrets. We know it happened about 300 years ago. We know it involved a lot of pressure and some kind of radiation. We know it wasn't a normal meteorite or a normal volcano. But everything else is still a guess. This is a key detail because it shows that even today, with all our satellites and computers, the Earth can still surprise us. A lot of people are confused about why we haven't just drilled a giant hole to see what is at the bottom. But the site is so remote and the rock is so unstable that it would cost millions of dollars and be very dangerous. For now, we have to rely on the scans and the tree rings. What most people don't realize is that there might be other mounds like this hidden in the vast Siberian wilderness. Siberia is so big that we haven't mapped every square inch of it on the ground. There could be an entire network of these anomalies waiting to be found. The real kicker is the way this mystery affects the people who go there. Every scientist who visits the site comes back with a different idea. It is like a mirror that reflects whatever you are looking for. If you like space, you see a meteorite. If you like geology, you see a gas burst. But nobody has the full picture yet. It turns out that the results really are hard to explain because they don't fit into any of our boxes. We are left wondering if we are looking at a natural event we don't understand or something else entirely. The thing is, I think we are just scratching the surface of what the Earth can do. Are we missing a key detail that would make it all click? Maybe the answer isn't in the rocks, but in the way we look at them. The Siberian forest is a place of endless mystery, and this giant rock nest is the biggest one of all. We have to consider that our current science might not have the words to describe what happened here. If the Patomskiy Crater was caused by a process we have never seen before, then we are like people from 1,000 years ago trying to explain a television. We see the result, but we don't understand the mechanism. This is a humbling thought for many scientists. They want everything to be neat and tidy, but nature is often messy and strange. The trees will continue to grow, and the rocks will continue to sink, and the hum under the ground might never stop. It is a reminder that there are still places on our map that are marked with a big question mark. When we look at the universe, we look for anomalies and distant stars, but we often forget to look right under our feet. The Patomskiy Crater is a call to pay attention to the strange things happening in our own backyard. It reminds us that we are still explorers, even on a planet we think we know everything about. Maybe one day, a new type of sensor or a new theory in physics will finally crack the code. Until then, the Fire Eagle Nest will stand as a monument to the unknown. It is a gray mountain in a green forest, a silent riddle that refuses to speak. We can keep guessing and we can keep digging, but the crater isn't giving up its secrets easily. It has waited for hundreds of years and it can wait for hundreds more. The results are hard to explain because they are a glimpse into a world we haven't discovered yet. Could there be more of these structures hidden in the forest? What do you think is buried deep under all that limestone? If you love unearthing the world's strangest secrets, make sure to like and subscribe for more mysteries.